Hi, so I'm Ryan Luginbuhl. I'm a physician and a digital health entrepreneur. I've worked in the space for a number of years. I got the entrepreneurial and digital health bug while I was a medical student. I started creating some of the first medical podcasts in the early 2004, 2005s, creating a note sharing service. Eventually, when I got to residency, I was the last generation of doctor that used a paper chart. And during my intern year, we started converting over to all the EHRs that were out there. So that was because of the HITECH Act in 2009. At the time, I started realizing this is going to be something big. There's going to be a lot of unstructured and structured information. And with medicine getting so expensive, it opened up a lot of opportunities. So GovRock, that sounds like a kind of a weird name, right, for a digital health startup. So let's get into where this comes from. This is actually a 2-act story. So this all starts during the wildfires of October 2017. It actually looks like today near Chico as well, unfortunately. But I'm the president of the Cornell Club, and I was contacted by Cornell because we have 1,500 alumni up in around wine country, and Cornell NorCal has 15,000 around the Bay, and Cornell Alumni Affairs said, hey, we have some people fleeing their homes, what can you do? So I have a really big list of 10,000 alumni around the area, so I decided to send an email out. And I embedded 2 Google Forms in that. I had one form that said, who can offer assistance, and one that said, who's in need. And we got an amazing outpouring. We had 120 people offer their homes out of 230 total offers of assistance. 10 people were displaced. And we started doing manual matching on that. So the interesting thing here was these are pretty well-to-do people. We only really ended up having to match one person, but it got me thinking, what does this mean for a larger population at scale? Looks like the video won't work. So we found that social media at the time was ineffective. Call centers were very expensive, inefficient, not scalable. One call center alone during the hurricanes cost almost $100 million. So our core question became, in a disaster, how do you engage a community in real time? And I met my co-founder, Sarah, she's back there, at a hackathon, and we created this. Let me see if I can play the video for you. So this, we met at a Stanford Health Plus Plus hackathon, and we created an automated me from this campaign. So basically, this chatbot asked, could you offer assistance or are you in need? And then it went through a workflow of figuring out where you are. The first part was offering assistance, and someone then says that they can offer temporary housing. So then after saying this, after searching for the location, it found folks that were in need of housing. And then on the flip side of that, to get the healthcare part into there, the next workflow runs through someone who's in need. So someone needing medical assistance, actually. And we took, over the course of a weekend, we basically integrated with what was the Better Doctor API, and we created a way for people to match up with doctors in the area. So we got into the finals at a Stanford Health Plus Plus hackathon. It was fun. And we had people starting to approach us and say, hey, what else do you got? So around this time, as we were trying to investigate this idea of in a disaster, how do you engage a community in real time, we were talking to investors and experts like at the USGS about the haywire scenario, basically how an earthquake will affect East Bay. And they were saying, don't try to solve the disaster part. There's a lot of alert notification systems out there. They can send a message out. Solve the day-to-day. That's how you really solve scalability. So we started to focus on this idea of day-to-day. And my co-founder, Sarah, found the Startup in Residence program. That's a program that started in the mayor's office under the late Mayor Ed Lee. It was a program to work with government on various challenges. And we started to work with the city of West Sacramento on a project that seems a little bit different, but the challenge was to redesign West Sacramento's volunteer engagement system. And that was our day-to-day engagement, which we thought could be scaled up into the disaster relief. And so we worked very closely with West Sacramento, and we went through what we called a city design sprint that was taking design sprint methodology, which started in Google Ventures under Jake Knopp. I highly recommend for any entrepreneur in the room reading that book. It's excellent. And then we took the Startup in Residence program, which over 4 months had discover, design, build, test, and we put them on top of each other, combined them. The reason being because you can't do a 5-day design sprint with something as busy as a city. So every week we went up to West Sacramento, we met people in every single department, and we started building. And by the end, we actually built something from scratch and implemented it and got a city contract in less than 4 months. We set a record out of 46 startups doing that. And so this was city design volunteer engagement, which really, at the heart of it, was kind of like Eventbrite for cities. It was a community engagement platform that could later be scaled up. But wait, we weren't really where we wanted to be. We wanted to help people in disasters. That was really the main goal. So that's really a community resilience platform. And so some literature, which I'll discuss in a second, came out around this time when we implemented this product and released it. And it basically stated that in a disaster, at least 1/3 of deaths are due to delayed or interrupted healthcare. So I don't know if you've all seen this in the news, but there was a New England Journal of Medicine article on the mortality in Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria. That didn't get a lot of press, but essentially that said that there weren't 64 deaths. There were actually closer to 5,000. Later on, a commission report, so the governor of Puerto Rico commissioned George Washington University to do another report that had a little bit more conservative estimate of 3,000 deaths. And so these are excess deaths. And the part that we were interested in was that 1/3. The other 2/3, that consists of other things, maybe acute accidents, buildings falling, people drowning. That's not what we can change. But we thought this idea of 1/3 of people being separated could actually be changed. And what we could do is we could start to use some of the principles that started in the High-Tech Act, structuring data, having like care management systems, knowing who people are at scale, to create a true population health platform. And then to be able to identify the folks that are vulnerable in these situations. So we have to really know who is vulnerable to delayed or interrupted healthcare. So this is my team, myself, Jason, our CTO, and Sarah, she's here as well. Great people, lots of great experience. So what is the real world example of this today? It actually has a basis in what's called special needs registries. So special needs registries are mandated in 10 states. They basically require that you have some sort of vulnerable list on people. The problem with them is they're really long, complex sign-up forms. They almost never get filled out. The ratio in some states we heard is a few thousand people when it should have been closer to 500,000. So they're manually updated. They don't get updated very often. And there's human outreach on top of that. There's also questionable HIPAA compliance on them. So our idea is a few simple clicks, you sign up, you have automated updates off of existing clinical data sets that have just come out, and then we have workflow. It's very similar to how we approached care management, basically, at scale. So simple sign up, critical clinical data, dynamic outreach, saves lives, simple. So basically technology, this community data is made actionable. We create really a critical data warehouse, not for a large hospital system, but essentially for the nation. And then local officials, healthcare, and government officials use that data to then identify and plan. So more specifically, the way that would look in terms of a day-to-day precision resilience piece, you basically provide healthcare providers and government agencies better tools to identify folks so they could look at a map and start to get situational awareness about different folks, who's on dialysis, who's going to perish after 4 days, who's going to perish after 1 day, who has oxygen needs, and so on. And the vulnerability scores can get a lot more complicated than that. Then you need actually outreach. So you have to kind of break the glass, as if it were, and actually reach out to folks. So we've created a mechanism for doing dynamic outreach, similar to existing alert notification systems, but you can talk back and forth. And then you can capture the data. So we've had great momentum. As I mentioned, we are in the Startup and Residence program. We got our first contract with the city of West Sacramento. Through City Innovate, we've actually created a way to piggyback contract through the rest of the 31 cities. We now are in talks with multiple cities, counties. The federal government has contacted us from Department of Homeland Security and FEMA, so we're working with them now on tabletop exercises. And so that's where we're at. Thanks. Any questions?
How are you making money? Who's paying?
Governments. Governments pay.
How much? What's the business model here? How much have
Sure.
you?
Right now, the base model is a PMPY structure for the day-to-day. So that's what we've already sold a contract in, and we set it at $1 per person per year. And then our resilience platform is another module. So in GovTech, digital health GovTech, you can create modules that then you sell that new piece. So the hard part is getting into a city first or a government.
Can you talk a little bit about your data flow and how you maintain privacy?
Sure. So for the precision resilience piece, we do not identify who the people are. And just like a physician who has to go into an office, when I go in and I have to actually see who the person is, I identify them. In a disaster, the same principle is okay. So we are going to maintain HIPAA. You won't be able to see anyone just day to day to plan, but in a disaster, you will be able to reach out to people through identified information. Only certain officials, need-to-know basis. Please.
Have you looked at any of the global health platforms that are doing similar things with medical or any business?
No, I mean, right now, the big problem is data. There's actually not very good data sets to do this. So there's really nothing comparable in terms of a population and the clinical data sets we're working with.
How do you keep it updated? Would you rely on the subscribers to update their information?
No.
No?
It's off some new initiatives from the government to maintain Medicare's, Medicaid's data and so on. It actually,
Communication with Medicare and Medicaid
Yep.
for diagnoses and whatnot.